We all have them, right? Those things we can't stop talking about, those passions that light us up. Whether you're a total bookworm, a gym rat, or just can't resist planning your next big trip.
Absolutely. Everyone's got something.
And today on the Deep Dive, we're going to explore some super interesting ways to talk about your hobbies in English.
That's right. We've been digging into some really insightful resources, and we're going to help you go way beyond just listing your interests. Like how to make them really shine through, no matter who you're chatting with.
Exactly.
We're talking personality-based vocab, natural conversation starters, for casual and formal settings.
Right.
And even some cultural tips to make sure you're coming across, just right.
So by the end of this deep dive, you're going to walk away feeling so much more confident, so much more articulate when you're talking about, stuff you love.
The things that make you, you.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's jump right in. I think it'd be interesting to start by thinking about how our personalities can actually shape the vocabulary we use.
Oh, totally. The words you choose can really give someone a much deeper sense of, who you are. And why a specific hobby, really speaks to you.
Right. Like, take someone with a super creative spirit.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, I do photography.
Yeah.
You might find yourself saying something like, I'm really into photography. I love capturing those candid moments, the ones that just disappear in a flash.
Yeah.
It's not just about what you do, but the heart behind it. Right.
The why.
The why, exactly. Or, if painting is your thing, instead of just I paint, it could be I enjoy watercolor painting. It's my way to unwind, to really express myself.
See, even that little addition of to unwind.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
Totally. It gives a glimpse into your inner world,
Yeah.
What about those who are always on the go?
Oh, the adventurers.
Yeah, the active adventurers, right.
Yeah.
Instead of a simple I go rock climbing, you could say I'm a rock climbing enthusiast. There's nothing like the challenge of reaching a new height,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That enthusiasm, that nothing like the challenge. It brings out that energy.
It does. And for those who, they just love exploring nature, I hike every weekend is perfectly fine. But what about something like I make it a point to hike every weekend to discover new trails, see new landscapes.
It paints such a more vivid picture.
Doesn't it? It does. And then, of course, we have those who find their joy, their comfort in activities closer to home.
Yeah.
Saying, I like to cook is, it's fine, but I'm a total foodie. I get so much satisfaction from baking sourdough bread from scratch.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It adds that detail, that personal touch,
It does.
And here's a fun one. I love this one for those who, they love a good night in. Instead of, I watch a lot of crime documentaries.
Okay.
How about I'm a true crime buff?
It's interesting about that shift to true crime buff. It's it signals a deeper dive into the whole genre.
Right, it does.
You're not just watching, maybe you're reading about cases or, following all the documentaries. You're invested.
Exactly. It's about those slightly more specific terms, that really resonate with others who share your interests. It elevates the conversation, doesn't it?
It does. It totally does.
So being just a little bit more thoughtful about our vocabulary it can really make our hobbies come alive.
It's like adding that extra spice,
It is. Now that we've talked about some vocab ideas, let's switch gears a bit and think about those natural phrases we can use, in everyday conversations.
This is where things get, I think, really fun,
They do.
Because knowing a few key phrases can just make all the difference, especially when you're chatting with someone new or just catching up with friends.
Absolutely. For casual situations, just chatting with friends or acquaintances, you can't go wrong with something simple, direct, easy to understand, I'm really into your hobby.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. Simple. I'm really into trying new recipes lately, for instance. Or if it's something that's been consuming you, you could say, I've been totally absorbed in your hobby lately. I've been completely absorbed in learning calligraphy lately.
See, those phrases are so approachable.
Yeah.
And they just immediately tell the person what's grabbing your attention at the moment.
You do.
They're fantastic for starting conversations without sounding too formal, too stiff,
Right. But what about those times when you find yourself in a more formal setting, like a networking event or, a job interview?
Ooh, yeah.
You still want to share your interests, right?
Of course.
But you got to do it in a way that feels appropriate for the environment. That's where phrases like, I'm passionate about your hobby, it really helps me to benefit you gain, can be really useful. For instance, I'm passionate about playing the piano. It really helps me to de-stress and focus my mind.
That's a great example, because in those formal situations, being able to connect your hobby to a tangible benefit or, a positive trait, it really shows a level of self-awareness, that can make a really strong impression.
It does. Like you're showing that your interests, they actually add value to your life, to your skill set even.
That's exactly.
Another super useful formal phrase is, outside of my professional life, I dedicate a significant amount of time to your hobby. Like outside of my professional life, I dedicate a significant amount of time to volunteering at the local animal rescue.
It shows commitment. It really highlights your commitment and the importance you place on this activity.
Absolutely. It's I'm well-rounded.
It does. It makes you think, when you think about your own hobbies, like what benefits do they bring to your life?
That's a great question, actually. It's such a good starting point for describing them in a more buttoned up way. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about cultural nuances. When you're, discussing your hobbies with people from different backgrounds, there are some things to keep in mind.
Right, because cultural understanding can really make or break your communication.
Right. It can.
And prevent some, unintentional misunderstanding.
It does.
Like what's considered, a totally normal hobby in one culture could be seen in a completely different light in another.
Absolutely. There are definitely some hobbies that are universally seen in a positive light.
Okay, like what?
Travel is a great example, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's associated with learning, broadening your horizons.
Expanding your worldview. Exactly.
Personal growth, cooking, especially when it involves sharing food.
Oh, breaking bread together?
Yes. Yeah. It's generally seen as, a warm, welcoming activity. And then, of course, there's photography.
Yeah.
A creative outlet, capturing beauty. It tends to be, pretty well received across cultures.
Those are prime examples of hobbies that are they create that common ground. They spark those positive connections no matter where you're from.
They do. But then, of course, there are some hobbies where you might want to put a little more thought into how you present them,
That's interesting. Like what?
Like, for instance, if your hobby is, collecting, I collect unusual items.
Okay.
Depending on what those items are, it might raise some eyebrows,
It might need some explaining.
It might.
Yeah. It's all about being mindful of how your passion might be perceived by someone who doesn't share your background, your culture.
Exactly. Take the example we saw earlier, right? Saying, I collect insect specimens.
Okay.
While you might be, super fascinated by entomology,
right,
someone else's initial reaction might be one of ooh, that's a little creepy.
It's interesting how even the word collecting in that context, it could sound a bit, unusual to some, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't automatically convey the scientific or educational side of the hobby.
Right. That's why offering, slightly more academic or descriptive alternative, like I study entomology, can make a world of difference.
It's it reframes the hobby completely.
It does.
It becomes a pursuit of knowledge rather than just an accumulation of things.
It changes the whole perception.
What's amazing is how a simple word swap can shift the entire interpretation of your interest.
Right.
Studying implies, a much deeper level of engagement, research, understanding.
Right.
Which is going to be received way more positively, I think, in a wider range of settings.
Absolutely. Especially when you're communicating across cultures where certain hobbies, they just might carry different meanings,
Baggage.
Yeah, baggage. Being mindful of your audience and just choosing your words with care can really make sure that, that your passion is understood and appreciated.
Totally.
To really solidify this, let's imagine some real-life scenarios, where you might find yourself talking about your hobbies.
I love this. Seeing these phrases in action can really help you get a feel for how to use them naturally,
It can. So picture this. You're at a party, making small talk, and someone asks you that classic question. So what do you do for fun?
The dreaded small talk question.
I know. But imagine, instead of just saying, I like board games, you say, I'm a huge board game enthusiast. I actually host a weekly game night with friends.
Oh, that's so much more engaging.
It is, isn't it? It gives them a specific detail. It opens the door for more conversation.
It's an invitation to join the fun.
Exactly. Now let's think about, a more professional setting. You're in a job interview.
Okay.
And the interviewer says, can you tell me a little about your interests outside of work?
Oh, yeah, that one.
Instead of just, rattling off a list, you can use this as a chance to showcase those valuable personal qualities, right?
So sure.
A great example would be, I'm an avid long-distance runner. Training for marathons has taught me so much about discipline and perseverance.
You're connecting it to, like, actual skills. Discipline, perseverance, all those things employers love.
They do. And it shows that, your hobbies aren't just things you do to pass the time. They're active pursuits that contribute to your growth, right?
Who you are.
Exactly, to who you are. So with these tools in your toolkit, I think you're so much better equipped to talk about the things you love, and you're going to do it with confidence,
You're going to make an impact.
You are.
And remember, sharing your hobbies, it's such a powerful way to connect with other people on a deeper level.
It is.
It lets them see your personality, your passions, all the things that make you unique.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a little food for thought, something to ponder.
Okay, I like it.
Think about one of your favorite hobbies.
Okay.
Now, how would you describe it to someone you just met, like in a casual conversation?
Got it.
Okay. Now, how would you describe that same hobby in a more formal setting, like a job interview or a networking event?
Interesting.
What aspects, what benefits would you highlight in each scenario?
Oh, that's such a good exercise. Thinking about different contexts will really help you tailor your language and just be more flexible in how you communicate your passions.
Exactly. Sharing your hobbies, it's a beautiful way to build connections, to express your unique identity. So go out there and let your enthusiasm shine through, let it shine through your English.
Let those passions sparkle.
Sparkle. Absolutely.